So Magmatic holds a highly prospective tenement package sitting around about 570 square kilometres in amongst some world-class gold and copper deposits. The area is really well endowed, as we can see there, greater than 80 million ounces of gold and greater than 13 million tonnes of copper. Magmatic's has three main project areas in this region, and Wellington North, which is in the east, sits on the Molong volcanic belt, directly along strike to the north of Cadia, which everyone would know, Newcrest operation, and also immediately adjacent to Alkane's Boda discovery. Over in the western part of this area, we have the Mile project, which is located along strike to the north of North Parks, operated by China Molybdenum and Sumitomo. And then to the south, we have the Parks project, which is along strike south of Alkane's Tomingley projects, including the Roswell and San Antonio discoveries. In these project areas, we have a number of advanced targets. All of them have existing drilling, and all of them have a number of very strong copper and/or gold hits already. Main targets we're looking for, or we have on these project areas, are porphyry gold copper and copper gold type targets, but we also have some strong epithermal and orogenic gold targets as well. Just a little bit about the company. The company was listed in 2017, and it basically came out of a number of Goldfields assets on the East Coast. At the time, Goldfields had spent close to $14 million on these particular tenements, and they still remain a major shareholder in the company. The directors obviously hold a significant share as well at 24%. And the company is well placed in terms of cash to execute our near-term exploration programs. Nominally, the company is nominally Perth-based, but we have an exploration office in the Orange area, which is very close and very handy to our project areas. Last year, Australian Gold and Copper, AGC, was spun out of Magmatic, and the two companies actually share resources and office space and expertise, to be fair, in the Orange office. And that helps us keep costs down and helps us put more money into the drill bit and into grassroots exploration for both companies, that is. So when I started, what really impressed me about Magmatic was just the sheer number of targets, number one, and the fact that a large number of these targets already have very significant mineralized drill hits. If we're looking at Wellington North here, a good example would be Rose Hill, and here you've got an intercept from surface, mind you, of 71 metres at 0.43% copper, 0.3 gold, and a little bit of moly chucked in just for good measure. That, for reference, that's very close to the existing global resource grade of the Cadia mine to the south. You can also see on that map that our tenements effectively surround the Boda discovery from Alkane, and a number of our projects have very similar geochemical and geophysical signatures to that Boda discovery, including the Lady Ilsa prospect in the central part of the project area. Over the last 6 months, the company has been also looking at high-grade gold at the Badangu Goldfield, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment as well. Over the last couple of years, there's also been a focus on porphyry exploration in the Wellington North area, and that's something we'll be continuing this year. So I mentioned we had been doing, over the last 6 months, we've been doing a little bit of work on the Badangu Goldfield. This is actually a relatively not unknown, but not well-known gold area. It was actually one of Australia's earliest gold producers. It produced from two major deposits, the Mitchell's Creek and the Dix Reward historic operations, and it produced 230,000 ounces at an incredible grade of 26 grams per tonne. There is some indications that the gold mineralisation here may be distally related as an epithermal signature of the porphyry discoveries. So that's still to be tested, but it is a compelling sort of an argument that they may be, the Badangu Goldfield may actually be linked to the Boda porphyries and also potentially some of the porphyry targets we've got in our own ground off to the west. So as of Friday, we've returned with drilling to the Dix Reward area. And this is an interesting deposit. Clough Resources actually re-entered the mine in late 1980s. And they did a number of bits and pieces of work. But one of the things they did do was a whole lot of channel sampling in the workings. They identified a number of areas that were not mined and had remnant high-grade mineralisation. You can see there that a number of those samples are plus 30, plus 40, plus 50 grams per tonne. And that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for extensions down dip along strike to these areas with our current drill program. That drill program, as I said, is going now and is expected to continue through into mid to late May. The other thing we've recently been doing at Badangu is actually looking away from the historic deposits a little bit and doing quite intensive geophysics and geochemical reconnaissance work. In late March, we announced that we had identified quite a significant 1 kilometre long gold anomaly, which sits sort of between and to the south of the existing workings. And this is another area we're looking to follow up in the near future. Okay, moving over to the west now, into the Junee Narromine Belt. Our Mile project sits about 50 kilometres north of the North Parks mine. It has a very similar age, composition and dimension to the North Parks region. North Parks, for those who aren't familiar with it, is one of the most significant mines on the east coast of Australia, having a global resource of over 600 million tonnes at 0.55% copper and nearly 0.2 grams per tonne gold. So a very significant operation. You can see in the gravity images there, in particular, the strong similarities between the two areas. When we look at the geochemistry, once again, you start to see these similarities again. For reference, these two images, one of North Parks, one of the Mile area that we're looking to explore, are at the same scale, and the coloured background there is actually copper anomalism, and they're also at the same scale. So you can see in the North Parks image there that these porphyries tend to be highly vertically extensive, but when you look at the actual surface or projected surface footprint of these deposits, they're actually quite small. So they can be a little bit difficult to drill for, but there's plenty of space to fit these deposits. They tend to occur in clusters, as we can see here, and that's the sort of thing that we're looking for in the Mile project. We've already got drill intercepts here, very strong drill intercepts here. For example, 70 metres at 0.54% copper and 0.15 grams per tonne gold. And you'll notice that compares very favourably with the global resource for North Parks that I actually just quoted. So we already know we've got strong copper mineralisation here associated with the porphyry stock. The other thing to note is that those deposits are arranged more or less around the monzonite stock. And that's the other key ingredient we've got here that we're looking to explore. So just recently, our board have approved a 3,000 metre diamond drilling program at Mile, which just happens to be the most significant diamond program since MAG's inception at this project. it's fair to say that the whole team actually quite excited about this drilling, and for the reason that we honestly believe that there's a very good chance that there's a major discovery lurking here, a North Park style major discovery. So having a look at a schematic cross-section of the Kingswood area that we're going to be exploring, you can see why this excitement is justified. Looking there, you can see we have significant copper, gold and molybdenum anomalism over a length of 1 kilometre. Magmatic's most recent drilling in the area was actually hole 412 on the western side of the monzonite body. And it actually, the results there, it actually hit 380 metres of 0.2% copper, basically from 150 metres to the end of hole. I've got on that image, you can see there's also some significantly higher grade copper intercepts on there, 17 and 22 metres at 0.6% copper. The other area of particular interest, if we look on the eastern side of the monzonite body there, there's 2 holes there that were drilled by Newcrest in nearly 2 decades ago now. And they include some even higher grade hits, 77 metres at 0.55, 0.15 with some molly chucked in again. But also has some higher grade intercepts at over 1% copper. The interesting thing about this area is it actually hasn't really been followed up since Newcrest did this drilling. And that's going to be a focus for us. This contact area between the monzonite and the other rocks is going to be a key area of focus in our upcoming drill program. And then moving to our third project area, which is the Parks project. Now, this sits along strike basically to the south of the Tomingley gold operations. This, of course, is a discovery hotspot as well, including the 3 projects listed there, Roswell, San Antonio, El Paso, that Alkane have basically discovered south of the Tomingley operations. I believe even this week, Alkane have upgraded the combined Roswell, San Antonio resource to 1.31 million ounces. So there is definitely some significant gold kicking around in this area. The interesting thing for us is that we already, relatively early stage exploration, but we already have some targets that look similar to some of the hits that were present at Tomingley before the thing was discovered, including 16 metres at 1.2 grams at McGregor's and 22 metres at 0.8 grams at Stockman's. Recent work on the project, we've been doing some ground mag over this area, and we're going to be using that to do some target generation and planning to do some drilling later in the year, RC and air core. And just in summary, what is the investment proposition for MAG? In my eyes, it's all about location, location, location. Basically, we are sitting in an area with a massive endowment, greater than 80 million ounces of gold. We have the Wellington North tenement that is basically surrounding the Boda porphyry discovery, and we've got a whole number of targets that have an almost identical geophysical signature. We're drilling for high-grade gold at Badangu, and in an area that we know has some remnant mineralisation at grades above, in some cases above 50 grams. And then at the end of this quarter, we're planning to go into Mile, and the potential there is for a major copper gold porphyry associated discovery, which is really exciting. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you. And if you want any more information, please feel free to come and visit us at the Magmatic booth during the rest of the conference. Thank you.
So next up, we have Mamba Exploration. So Mamba Exploration have built a diverse portfolio of exploration projects in Western Australia. The company is focused on gold, copper, and nickel. And Mike Dunbar, the managing director, will now tell us their story.
Thanks very much, Ollie. Thanks for the opportunity for RIU and the rest of the team for giving us the opportunity to present Mamba. And fortunately, first opportunity to actually present in person rather than virtually, which is a very nice change, I must admit, after quite some time stuck over in Perth. Excuse me. Bit of a forward-looking statement that we all have to put up there. This is on the website, so you can read that at your leisure at some stage tonight if you want to fall asleep. So who is Mamba and where have we come from and why have we chosen the areas we're exploring? First of all, we're a small company. We listed in February of last year, raised $7 million, around 6.5 after costs, and three of us put the company together. 60 million shares on issue, only 42 of those are tradable, the rest are still held in escrow for 2 years as a result of the vendors and the board putting the company together. A couple of interesting parts here, we've got $3.7 million in the bank, so we're not needing to raise funds anytime soon, with a market capitalisation as of today around $7.9 million, giving an enterprise value of around 4.2 million. So really quite cheap relative to where I believe we should be. A very tight capital structure with the vast majority of the shares held by board, management and the vendors. So where are our projects and why do we select these project areas? Here's a map of Western Australia. Now, all of our projects are 100% owned and in Western Australia. So our projects we selected deliberately because they're on the edge of the Yilgarn or outside the Yilgarn area. Now, a lot of people would say that's a strange thing to highlight, that where we are not in the Yilgarn. We've also, so you can see our locations, project locations there. So you can see they're really grouped in two areas. Area to the south and an area up into the north. And the reason for that is the Kimberley and Ashburton regions is very hard to work in the summer months. And similarly, the Great Southern projects are hard to work in the winter months. So it gives us year-round news flow by having a geographically diverse project locations. The other reason we've chosen these locations and why we selected our projects as carefully as we did is a lot of the vast majority of the major gold discoveries in the last 20 years have not been in the Yilgarn. They've been on the margin or outside the Yilgarn. And they include Tropicana, Gruyere, Karlawinda, Haveleron, and Hemi. So all of those are outside the Yilgarn, which to quite a few people who are exploring in Western Australia get quite surprised by that. In addition to that, a lot of the base metal projects, the large base metal projects in the last 20 years have also been outside the Yilgarn, being Julimar most recently, Nova Bollinger, Savannah North up in the Kimberley, and Winu. So all of those projects are outside what is traditionally the traditional area for exploration. And that's why we've selected those areas, really because we want to find the next big project and the next big discovery. So our projects, as I've mentioned, are really split into two main areas. The southern area, which is the summer projects, which we can work during the cricket season, so to speak, and gives us an opportunity to continue year-round exploration. So in the Great Southern, we've got the Cali Creek Gold Project, historical gold workings in the area, recent soil samples up to 2.8 grams per tonne, not ppb, but grams per tonne in soils, which confirms the historical sampling and has upgraded those targets for now in excess of 4 kilometres of strike length. Recent RC drilling in the area, very shallow, has intersected up to 15 metres at 2.2 grams and extended that now for over 500 metres of strike length so far. In addition to this, in addition to Cali Creek, we have the Darling Range Gold Project, Gold, Nickel and PG project. Just outside of Perth, around the Julimar discovery. We're around 30 kilometres away, and we've got a number of exciting targets in that area, which I'll go through all this in more detail shortly. Moving to the northern areas, really are our winter projects. And these include the East Kimberley project, where we're exploring for nickel, copper, and silver, and identified some very high-grade silver and copper mineralisation at the Copper Flats project, including samples of up to 30% copper, and 230 grams of silver. Recently doubled the size of that project as well. And the fourth project is the Ashburton Gold Project to the northeast of Carnarvon, where we've got some historical workings in the area and some high-grade historical RC drilling that we'll be following up again this year. So going through the projects in a little bit more detail, the Cali Creek Gold Project in the Great Southern of Western Australia, halfway between Albany and Ravensthorpe. We've got two tenements here. I've only shown one on the map here, but you can see three main work areas and historical workings. Northern working, some central workings, and all of these were only in around the 40s and 50s and have not been adequately drill tested subsequently. And in the southern prospect. The southern prospect has been our focus, and we've really spent most of our time really exploring that southern project so far. So having a look at that in the geochemical sampling we've undertaken and confirmed, we've identified a 4 kilometre long soil anomaly. Samples up to 2.8 grams per tonne, but 1.9, 1.7 and 1.3 and a number of other recent samples. And initial drilling in the southern area through here, from shallow drilling has intersected, as I mentioned earlier, 500 metres of strike length of a mineralised structure, which has only been drill tested to around 30 metres vertically, 35 metres vertically. Of the 32 holes drilled in the areas to date, 27 have come up with significant intersections to date. So an excellent start for that project area. The intersections include 15 metres at 2.2 and importantly from 1 metre down hole. 15 at just under 2.1, 9 at 2.5, and you can read the rest of them. Very significant intersections, and we'll be following those up. The important part of that system is, for us, we've been deliberately extending this strike length because the key for this system is to grow the strike length. After we've grown the strike length, then we'll start chasing this at depth. The deepest hole we've drilled here is only about 35 metres vertically, so about 45 metres on the angle, and mineralisation remains open along strike and at depth. Preparations are underway for the next summer's drill programs in the area, where we'll have already got a POW approved for 150 more holes. Dieback and environmental surveys have already been completed, heritage survey this month, all leading towards drilling in Q4 of this year. Moving to the Darling Range project, as I mentioned, just outside of Perth. And you can see where the Julimar project is, just in through here, just outside of Perth, around 70 kilometres from Perth. Julimar on the right-hand side here on the magnetics, you can see a trend running through here, and that's the area that's been drilled in the Julimar discovery to date. Our project is around 30 kilometres to the northeast, up at Black Hills, and we've identified a 6 kilometre long ultramafic trend in that area and undertaken a fair bit of work so far and will continue to do so. So the work we've undertaken to date includes identifying a 6 kilometre long 2 PGE auger and soil anomaly, and that identifies two main target areas to the north and to the south of the project area. On top of that, we've undertaken mapping and detailed magnetic reinterpretation and processing of the area, and identified and flown VTEM, and again confirmed that northern target and the southern target. Late last year, we drilled the northern target with 2 holes and have drill tested that one, tried to drill test that one plate there that you can see in plan view sits here in the detailed magnetics. We've intersected disseminated sulfides of the right types of sulfides in the area, have not explained the VTEM anomaly to date, but importantly, we have not hit any stratigraphic black shales or anything that would explain the VTEM anomaly to date. We'll be going in there this month with ground-based geophysics to better define those targets further. Moving to our winter project, so the Kimberley area, this is where we'll be active between now and Q3, Q4, end of Q3, early Q4. And really the main focus for us has been in East Kimberley, has been the Copper Flats area here. Very, very large tenement package, to give it a sense of scale, 190 kilometres from there, all the way through to the end of the Ruby Plains project. So a very, very large tenement package, and it runs all the way from effectively from Halls Creek all the way to the Northern Territory border. What we've identified from historical work and our original tenements that we applied for, the original tenements are in black here, and that's the edge of the sedimentary basin. And I could go through, if you come to the booth after the presentation, more details of the exploration model we're working to, but we commenced exploration with these tenements in black here, and identified and confirmed historical work with up to 34% copper in surface samples, and most importantly, up to 230 grams per tonne of silver. Now, the copper, take it with a pinch of salt when you see copper grades of up to 30 or 40%. Clearly, there's been supergene enrichment of that copper, and so you need to temper enthusiasm of those types of copper grades. However, the important part is the very high silver grades in this system as well. Because the silver is far less mobile and will not be enriched in the supergene area, that provides a very good vector into the copper mineralisation in the overall system. The areas through to the area 5, up to, as I mentioned, up to 34% copper, but very high silver, up to 50 grams silver, and up to 230 grams silver in some historical working areas through here. When we went up there, we identified not only those areas, but an area further into the basin in the blue tenements, and we've recently then pegged more than double the size of the tenement package to the north, further into the basin. And the reason for that is that sedimentary basin in the north is far shallower than originally interpreted, and on that basis really is within depth range for us to be exploring for. Geochemical and geophysical programs will be undertaken there in the next 2 quarters. So just looking at the doubling of the size of the Copper Flats project itself, we undertook a detailed review of all the data in this area and identified a number of targets, but historical soil sampling in the Ord Hill prospect identified up to 2 kilometre long, 500 metre wide soil anomaly, up to 5% copper and over 5 grams silver. In addition to that, surface sampling further to the south, which has never been followed up, to 40% copper and 160 grams silver. So very, very significant system. We'll be going in there with detailed geophysics this field season and expanding the geochemical system and project in that area this year as well. Very briefly, moving on to the Ashburton Gold Project to the northeast of Carnarvon. We've got 2 main areas of focus. The northern area is the key at this stage. There's been historical workings in the area and very limited RC drilling of those targets. The RC drilling that has been undertaken included up to 4 metres at 20 grams and trench and geochem sampling of the old workings identified stacked loads of gold mineralisation up to 40 grams, 46 grams in those stacked loads. So there are a number of large regional structures that you can see running through that target area, and none of those have been appropriately tested either with surface geochem sampling or with any drilling. So that will be a focus again for this year. So in summary, we've got 4 100% owned gold, copper and nickel projects in Western Australia. The Cali Creek Gold Project, we've already identified a 500 metre long trend of mineralisation up to 2.5 grams per tonne from that drilling, and a 4 kilometre long soil anomaly. 27 of the 32 holes have hit significant mineralisation, which is an excellent strike rate, and we'll continue that drilling along strike and at depth later this year. At Darling Range, we've done initial drilling of one of the VTEM conductors. We've got another 6 that we'd like to test in the area. We've not explained the VTEM conductors to date, and we have identified off-hole conductors from the downhole EM that's been completed. Ground EM will be undertaken there this quarter and drilling later in the year. In the Kimberley project, reprocessing of the geochemistry and geophysics, and then geochem and geophysical new surveys of that project area this year as well, and in the Ashburton ongoing soil and RC drilling this year. So that's a summary of Mamba. So thanks very much for the opportunity to present. If anyone wants more information, feel free to come along to our booth 57, for the rest of the project, the rest of the conference. Thanks very much.
Next up is Alchemy Resources. So a gold, base and battery metals explorer. Alchemy Resources has built a highly strategic land package in the Coroni and Lake Rebecca greenstone belts east of Kalgoorlie in Western Australia, and advanced base metals and battery metals assets in New South Wales. The company also has exploration and near-term production joint ventures with Sandfire Resources and TSX listed Superior Gold in the Briar Basin of Western Australia. Chief Executive Officer James Wilson will now provide an update on the value proposition for Alchemy's portfolio.
No, it's okay. Thank you, everybody, and nice to be here, and thank you, Fresh Equities and the Vertical Events team for putting on the conference, and it's nice to be in Sydney over from Perth, finally. Just running you through disclaimer there that everybody's happy to read later on if you wish. So who is Alchemy? Well, we're a diverse explorer with projects in Western Australia, up in the Plutonic area in WA, and also in the Lachlan Fold Belt of New South Wales. We've got a fairly dominant land position in Western Australia. At Coroni, it's all 100% owned, and recently was never explored for lithium up until about 2 weeks ago on our ground. And I'll run you through that. And we're also drilling underway on our gold targets there. We've also got joint ventures with Sandfire Resources and Superior Gold, which are managed by those companies. So 20% interest there that we are free carried on, which is great. And in New South Wales, we have a bunch of high-grade copper gold, nickel and cobalt and alumina, and pretty much the periodic table, but some very advanced assets there that we're very excited about as well. Corporate overview, we've got a roughly a market cap of around about 23.8 as of today. It's been up and down in the last week on the lithium news. And we've got a fairly well-rounded board. Lindsay Dudfield, my chairman, he's a geologist, 30 years experience. He's currently the executive director of Kimberley Resources as well, the biggest undeveloped lithium asset in the US. So a bit of a shout out for him there. Myself, I'm a geologist, 20 years experience, former analyst for a number of WA broking houses. And Liza Carpine, well-regarded executive, company secretary for Northern Star in the formative years, and current NED of Mincor Resources and the recently listed RLF AgTech. As you can see, our share price has done reasonably well in the last few weeks, and that's largely sort of based on the announcement of our gold and more recently the lithium news, which I'll run you through in a jiffy. So over to Coroni. Coroni is really easy. It's actually 110 kilometres east of Kalgoorlie. It's along the Trans-Access Road that goes all the way to South Australia and the Indian Pacific Railway. We've got 90 kilometres of prospective strike. It's always been explored for gold and mostly gold and nickel over the last probably, I'd say, 50 years. We put out 111,000 ounce maiden resource last year. It was already there. We just had to drill out and just really sort of put some numbers around it to get some scope and to build a platform from. Just there. And then also we have our Lake Rebecca tenements up in the north there of and sort of more largely semi-contiguous ground and giving us 160 kilometres of strike in the region. Lake Rebecca is under application and it sits in between Caruso Dam owned by Northern Star and Ramelius Rebecca project, which they just bought off Apollo Consolidated. Just zooming in on Coroni, this colourful map is a MAG image with some of the detailed MAG we did last year. What we've found is that, the operation is sitting right next to Silver Lake's Aldous mining operations. So there's roads and infrastructure, and it's brilliant for operating as an explorer. We have 111,000 ounce maiden gold resource released mid last year, and most of that's under 150 metres from surface. And as we said, it sets a solid platform for growth in the region for further gold exploration. We did some high resolution drone mag there last year. As you can see, sort of the better detail on the right. We discovered that the high ion dolerites respond well to mag, so we got the drone over it and relatively low cost, and it points out those structures quite nicely. And we're basically aiming to go and test this area where a lot of historic explorers had gone in there and with RAB and whatnot, and the holes had fallen over, or they collapsed, or they couldn't get through the younger cover. And we aim to change that with some more aggressive methods. So we're currently drilling at the moment down the south end there at Gilmore, and we're hopeful to go and do some infill up at Coroni East as well as further north in this program. Just zooming in on that area for Coroni East, just as by way of example, very quickly, the grey dots on there, you can see is all the historic RAB holes that were drilled. And as I said, they couldn't get through the alluvials and they couldn't get through the calcrete harder cover. We came back in with a more powerful air core rig and we punched through that, and we were able to go and generate some of the results you saw in there. 2 meters at 2.7, metre at 4, and sort of meters at 5s in there as well. May not seem like much, but the Coroni ore bodies are very, very tight, and you're either in it or you're not. And so these are all results from saprolite. We've yet to go and test the bedrock component of that, and that's what we're aiming to do. Just for reference as well, the distance between those big circular dots there is up to 600 meters. So at Coroni, you can fit 2 ore bodies in that strike length. So it's reasonably material to get those kind of results. The white areas there are sort of the high iron dolerites, and you're just looking for those disrupted zones in there, which is what we're targeting. Perhaps the most significant thing that we've had recently was our lithium and Pathfinder anomalism that we've identified at the same area. So we looked at all our old geochem that we had from about a year or two ago, and turns out that most people would have been looking at the gold pathfinders of arsenic and bismuth and tellurium. And when you look at the other 45 elements of multi-element, you discover that you've got a big thumping lithium anomaly over multiple areas. It's very exciting. We do sit 8 kilometres to the south of the Mana deposit owned by Global Lithium and Breaker Resources. And I'd encourage you to have a look at their presentation a bit later today. There's also 3 anomalies off to the west there at Roe Hills. And a lot of this stuff was largely based on geology targeting gold mineralization. So it's not all targeting the lithium exploration, which we aim to infill. So what do we have at the moment? We've got location along strike from Mana. Some people say it's a 5 iron. It's probably a little bit further than that. Geochemistry, we've got identifies the granite as fertile in these regions, which you need to have prospective LCT pegmatites. And we've got the correct lithium geochemistry and pathfinders as well. And as of last Saturday, when our geologist Nathan, who's around here, I might sort of add him somewhere in the audience, walked over it, we found the right host rock, and we actually discovered pegmatites mapped over about 1 kilometre initially, and we'll be out next week doing that again, where the GSWA, the Geological Survey of Western Australia, nor by anybody else for the last 40 years had actually found. So boots on ground, best form of exploration you can possibly find, and just shows what you can find. So what are we doing next? We're getting detailed mapping and sampling on this. We're going to go and try and figure out the strike length of these outcropping pegmatites. We're doing infill broad space soils on their main sort of 7 kilometre long anomaly, which I'll show you next. And then we'll start working further south. And there's a 20 kilometre long prospective zone to the south, and even further than that, and I'll show you with the regional prospectivity in a second. So just zooming in on this area over here, which is our new sort of high priority area. So this is the new lithium targets at Cherry, Hickory, Mesquite and Pecan. It's a 7 kilometre by 1 kilometre wide anomalous zone, and it's 8 k's from a long strike from Mana. We did discover pegmatites adjacent to the anomaly at these areas. In the green areas, I think you can see sort of just up here. And that was sort of an initial inspection, largely because we were coming here. So we're back out there next week, and we're going to be mapping more of this stuff. And the zone sits within that big yellow zone there, which is the Goldilocks Zone. And that's the bit that's outboard of the granite, but within the mafic territory, and the zone where you get LCT pegmatite formation. So, so far we're very happy, and the lithium anomalies have never been drilled in probably the best part of 50 years of exploration. Just looking more regionally, we're just looking at that area up there. That's the new sort of high priority targets. The big orange area there is what they sort of classify as the Goldilocks Zone, which sits outboard of the granite, as I said. And we just happen to have over 50 kilometres of strike. So again, this area has only been explored for gold historically, and some of these areas have never been tested for anything at all. So there's a lot of work to be done. There's no exploration of any kind in the southern areas, and we've got an initial area of about 15 targets to test in a 20 kilometre long zone south of the initial high priority zone. So there's a little bit to do, and we're quite excited about it too. Just moving north, this is our Lake Rebecca tenure. I just sort of put all these logos on just to sort of earmark how much we actually do have. We're talking about the lithium stuff down here, and this is our Lake Rebecca tenure up here. And we're sandwiched in between some of the big guys up there, between Northern Star, Ramelius, and St Barbara there in green, and Alchemy has the rest in red. So we really do have a dominant control of the Keith Kilkenny and the Claypan Shear, which we're quite excited about. The land access agreements are nearing completion there, and we're hopeful to get that granted sometime in the next quarter or two. It's quite exciting given the M&A that's been going on there with Ramelius buying out Apollo Consolidated recently. Just moving to our JVs, we have the Briar Basin Jv, which we have with Samphire Resources and with Superior Gold. The red areas with red areas with Samphire and the blue areas with Superior. They're free carried interest. Superior is advancing the Hermes South deposit. We're hopeful they'll actually push that into production in the near term, and they're working on that with resource expansion and drilling satellites, and that will provide free cash flow to Alchemy shareholders. An explorer with cash flow. I don't think anybody's ever heard of that. So, and Samphire just keeps drilling away. They've drilled several thousand air core holes on our ground, which we held a 20% interest in, and they're doing a basin-wide analysis at the moment. So it's great to sort of have some formidable tenure and free carried interest there, which is added value, we think. Just moving to New South Wales, we have a joint venture with, it's becoming the joint venture with Develop Global. They're currently completing the deed of company arrangement after buying Heron Resources. We have a number of projects along the Gilmore Suture, including Melrose, which is an intrusive related gold system, Yellow Mountain, which is a copper gold porphyry, Overflow, high-grade gold and base metals in proximity to Hera, and West Lynn, our alumina and nickel cobalt resource. I'll just zoom in on some of these assets down in the southern area. So just looking at the area around Melrose and Yellow Mountain, we are proximal to Mineral Hill. You can see Melrose is down here and Mineral Hill is just to the east there, that was bought out by Kingston Resources. There's extensive historic workings all around this area around Yellow Mountain and Melrose. We've got gold targets to test now. We're working on the land access agreements to get into Yellow Mountain, and we're hopeful that will be sorted soon. And we're targeting areas where you've got historic drill results of 24 metres at 1% copper and a polymetallic back end, and some of the malt dump samples have come up at 7% copper and 6.5% lead. And there's a picture of one of those things that you see around the area of the old shaft. There hasn't been any drilling on this thing since 1986, so we're very, very keen to get in there and keen to drill test that in Q3. I'll just discuss Overflow next, which is our project just in the north area up here. This is a zone of 700 metres of mineralised strike extent. There's a number of high-grade zones in here in the purple dots here, and we're looking at drilling that sometime in calendar year 22. As most people would be aware with Cobar systems, you should be drilling sort of down this way as these systems develop at depth. It's 50 kilometres down the road from Hera. Mineralogically, apparently it looks the same. And it's got great results of 6 metres at 7.6 gold and 10 metres at 4.4, and a whole host of others that you can read on the screen there, which we're quite excited about. It's just a function of trying to be able to get in there and get rigs to be able to go and drill, and a good advanced project as well. Just moving out to West Lynn, which is up in the north near Nyngan. It's an advanced critical metals asset. We have a nickel, cobalt and alumina resource on there, which you can read. We did do some metallurgical test work in 2019, and we achieved a good metallurgy with the nickel cobalt. But perhaps the most important thing is we were actually able to generate a high purity alumina product from the alumina resource that sits on top of this thing. It's all flat lying and very easy to mine. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to do some additional test work on that to generate a 99.99% purity product. And it is classified as one of the critical metals projects in New South Wales. And we've got a strategic review underway to identify best possible pathways for additional metallurgy, how we mine it, do we try and introduce a partner, and various other value-added catalysts that we can hope to put out. Sorry, indicative exploration timeline. I've got a strong pipeline on news flow. It's drill, drill, more drill. The lithium probably taking the centre stage at the moment. We'll be back on the ground sampling with that. JVs handle themselves. They're great and ongoing. And just looking at drilling at Yellow Mountain and Overflow, as well as tenement access into New South Wales. So we're cheap, $21 million market cap, battery minerals optionality from HPA, as well as lithium, emerging lithium potential at Coroni, and work to commence immediately. And really it is a matter of watch this space. We're very, very hopeful and changing the paradigm in this part of the world that no lithium's been explored for in our part of the world ever. Come and see us at Booth 80. My name's James, and thank you very much for the opportunity today. Cheers.
Thanks, James. Next up is Cooper Metals, a newly listed copper and gold explorer with a strong foothold in the highly prospective Mount Isa inlier. Cooper is rapidly building an enviable pipeline of targets through boots on the ground exploration to large-scale acquisition of detailed regional geophysics. MD Ian Warland, beg your pardon, will outline why the upcoming maiden drill program has the company very excited. Okay.
Thanks, Ollie, and thanks everyone for attending this afternoon. So we listed on the stock exchange just late last year. We raised around $5 million with 40 million shares on issue. We're a copper gold explorer with our flagship project in Mount Isa, and we've also got a couple of projects in WA. I'll be mostly talking about our Mount Isa project today. Standard disclaimer. So just a quick corporate snapshot. CPM's our ASX code at 46 cents. We're around $18 million with 40 million shares on issue. We're tightly held with about 50% in the top 20, and the board are very well incentivized with around 12% of the company. So our share price performance over the last 6 months has been quite healthy. The yellow dots you can see on that graph are news items that we've released. One of the main catalysts has been the recent success by Carnaby Resources in the Mount Isa area. So they announced some very good copper gold intercepts only 10 kilometres from our tenure. And we've enjoyed a bit of neurology from that, but we've also been building our projects in that area, and we're now drill ready, and we'll be doing our maiden drill program next week. Just a little bit about the board. So Michael, our chairman, is a geologist and an accountant of 30 years. He has extensive network in the financial industry in UK and in Australia. Myself, I'm a 30-year geologist with international and domestic exploration and mining experience in a range of large companies, and also I've been in the junior sector for around the last 10 years. So I'm a passionate explorer. I've been mostly in exploration for the last 25 years. Tim, our youngest director, he is a financial advisor, and he's got extensive networks also in the UK and in Australia in the broking industry. So a little bit about our projects, 3 main project areas. Our flagship project in the world-class Mount Isa Inlier. We've got a very large tenement package that we've been expanding over the last 6 months. It's highly prospective for copper gold deposits. Our Yamana Gold Project in WA is near Gold Road's Gruyere Gold Deposit, which has around 6 million ounces of gold in it. We're just a long strike from there. It's very exciting. And the Guru Copper Gold Project, which is in the Murchison region of WA, the Gulliver Greenstone Belt, and located near Silver Lake's Deflector Mine, which has around 1.3 million ounces of gold in it. Part of our strategy for setting up the company was really going to known, well-mineralised terrains that were close to infrastructure that we believe were underexplored and overlooked. So more detail about our Mount Isa East. So classic, it's in the world-class Mount Isa Inlier. We're targeting iron oxide copper gold and iron sulfide copper gold and shear-hosted copper gold deposits. We've got a large tenement holding, which we've grown from around 1,300 square kilometres to almost 1,600 square kilometres with some key acquisitions over the last few months. There's potential for third-party processing options. There's multiple copper gold occurrences in the area, and we believe a real lack of drilling and a lack of modern geophysics. So more deposits will be found in this area, and we're already seeing that highlighted with Carnaby's recent success just nearby our tenements. A little bit about the geology of the Mount Isa area. Our project area shown here in yellow. Oops, back one. Our project area shown in yellow and white and blue. We've got the Western Fold Belt where Mount Isa is, the world-class Mount Isa deposit, the lead zinc and the copper deposits, the Leichhardt or Kalkadoon Leichhardt Belt, and the Eastern Fold Belt. Just for reference, Carnaby are down here about 10 kilometres from our tenure, and Hammer Metals are all around us as well here. This is part of the very highly prospective Mary Kathleen domain. There's a number of copper gold occurrences through here shown as the little bubbles. There's a lot of old historical workings in this area. Many of them have never had any modern geophysics or any drill holes. I'll be talking a lot about the Python and the King Solomon prospects in this area and a little bit about this southwestern area as well. So the King Solomon and Python prospects. King Solomon especially is an area of old workings, just located through here, where there's about 1.5 kilometre strike length of shallow pits and shafts. And we've been out there, boots on the ground, just mapping the area and looking at the mineralisation along that trend. We've got Python, which is only 2 kilometres just to the northwest up in this area. Again, there's an old shaft there and some shallow workings as well. So we've just recently completed a fixed loop EM survey over the King Solomon Python prospects. So zooming in a little bit on King Solomon, where King Solomon can be broken up into 3 main areas, King Solomon 1, 2 and 3, and that's over about a 1.2 kilometre strike length there. We've done our own sampling and we've got grades up to 2.58 grams per tonne gold and 16.6% copper in the oxide zone. The gold is very interesting because this was slightly off trend and in an area where there's no old workings, so that we believe the old timers have missed this spot. So we've gone back in there and we've done the fixed loop EM to see if we could basically work out the best areas to drill under these old workings. There's never been any drilling along that whole strike length. The mineralisation appears to pinch and swell along that 1.5 kilometres. So we were using the fixed loop EM to basically find the sweet spots along that trend for drill testing. So just showing down on this slide here, that's an EM image, the hotter areas of the EM response, we believe from sulfides. Our consultant geophysicist has had a close look at that and he's picked out a number of targets along that EM response for us to drill test, and some of those are coincident with the old workings in the area. So we've planned up around 2,000 metres of RC drilling. We'll be starting that next week and we'll be doing a number of holes on these EM targets and under the old workings. So we're really excited about that. The drill pads are just getting created as we speak now, and we'll be drilling there very soon. So the Python prospect, it's just about 2.3 kilometres to the northwest of King Solomon. We think it's on the same sort of trend. We've got rock chip results up to 35% in the oxide zone. So there's quite a bit of mineralisation around the old shaft and around the old shallow pits. We got up to 8.5% around the old shaft with some anomalous gold. Interestingly, the best EM response but was about 500 metres away from the old workings, and it was coincident with an airborne EM anomaly. So the government had done a regional survey in 2016 where they did 2 kilometre line-spaced VTEM survey. We had our geophysicists process that up. They found an anomaly just in this area, so we decided to attack that with a fixed loop EM and came up with a nice robust conductor. So that conductor is about 300 to 400 metres long, 100 metres down dip, and it starts at about 10 metres below surface. I went out there recently to do some ground truthing because these EM conductors can be from a number of things, but very encouragingly, at surface, there was anomalous copper and anomalous sulfur, so up to 0.14% sulfur and around 700 ppm copper. So the geophysical model indicates that the mineralisation will get a lot stronger with depth. Now it's in an interesting location on the side of a hill and it's logistically challenging, but we can get a drill rig in there. We're just working through some final approvals before we can drill that one out. There's a number of other prospects in the Mount Isa area. Just briefly, the Yarraman prospect, where some historical soil sampling outlined an anomaly, a soil anomaly around 400 metres long, centred around some old shafts. So the next step here is really to do some ground geophysics to pinpoint the best spots to drill. What's very encouraging is that we also did some rock chip sampling nearby and found rock chips up to 20% copper and some anomalous gold and silver in shear zones that are heading in the sort of northeasterly direction. So I think there's a much broader scope for widespread copper mineralisation here, and that will be targeted in our VTEM survey that's coming up. Just briefly about the southwestern prospects of the Mount Isa East area. Again, there's a number of old mines. The biggest one, the Big Hill mine, was around 140 metre long open cut. But I'm more excited about the Wonder mine, which had 3 vertical shafts, and there was an open cut between 2 of the shafts around 90 metres long. So we've got rock chips up to 15.7% copper, and there's anomalous gold and silver associated with that. There's evidence of sulfides from the area. There's old stockpiles of sulfides near the Wonder mine. There's never been any drilling there. There's never been any modern geophysics. So we'll be hitting that one with some IP and targeting the best locations with some RC drilling this year. Just regionally, that's on a north-south shear zone there. That's the Wonder mine. It's on a second order fault near this large Yapo fault. So structurally, it's in a very favourable position. This whole area to the north has never had any exploration at all. So that'll be covered by our VTEM survey. A bit of detail about the VTEM survey. As I said, the government had done a regional survey in the area, so we know VTEM works. We also know that the Barbara deposit, which is up here, it's around 4.7 million tonnes of 1.6% copper. Now, it's been mined out and processed at the Glencore mill. It was a screaming VTEM conductor, so we know VTEM works. There's never been any detailed VTEM in this Mary Kathleen domain over these tenement areas. So I think it's a no-brainer to do that. It'll allow us to rapidly screen our tenements and generate targets for follow-up. Once we generate those targets, we'll be hitting the ground with ground geophysics and follow that up with some RC drilling. So I'm really excited about the VTEM survey. The VTEM survey is starting this month. It's all locked in and ready to go. Okay. Just briefly about Guru in WA. So our Guru area in the Murchison, it's not far from Silver Lake Resources. We've done some regional geochem and on 200 metre by 200 metre grid. We've identified a number of gold anomalies already. There's these key northeasterly structures in this area that have gold deposits along them. And we found that we've got gold anomalism associated with some of these structures. So we've already had the crew out there doing infill sampling. Those assays are in at the lab and I should expect them shortly. And then we'll be following that up with RAB drilling this year to find the source of the gold anomalism. Our Yamana tenement near the Gruyere gold deposit, we're just working through the access issues there. This is a very exciting area. We've got a tenement along strike from the Gruyere gold deposit on the Dorothy Hill shear zone. There's been hardly any RAB drilling in the past, so hopefully we'll get that access to that later in the year and do some RAB drilling to follow that up. So key takeaways, RC drilling next week at King Solomon and Python. We're expanding our ground in the Mount Isa area. We're a major player in the area. It's a very exciting spot where copper gold discoveries are being made right now. We're doing a large VTEM survey, which is really rapidly going to generate a large pipeline of targets for us. We're well funded. We've got news flow all year round, and our share price is strongly leveraged to any exploration success. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Next up is Strickland Metals. So Strickland Metals controls 100 kilometres of strike over the world-renowned Yandal Greenstone Belt in Western Australia, with an existing gold resource of just over 600,000 ounces. Their 2022 drilling campaign assays are just beginning to flow, and the results to date have exceeded the company's expectations. Strickland's CEO, Andrew Bray, is here to take you through their story.
Thanks, Ollie, and thanks everyone for being here. A quick background on how Strickland got here. We got control of the company about a year ago. The previous management were chasing a dual gunner lookalike target, which didn't pan out as planned. They had a number of other projects, but one that was quite interesting to us was on the Yandal. We quickly embarked on a consolidation of about 100 k's of strike on the northeast flank in 3 months, and put together via those acquisitions a resource base of just over 600,000 ounces. Throughout that process, we raised about 30 mil of equity over the last year that paid for the acquisitions and cashed up the company for the drilling programs that we're planning to do this year. We did one quick RC program late last year, and the very northern tip of our project creeps just into the Irahidi Basin, which is just along strike from Rumble Resources, and we made a zinc-lead discovery of the same sort of tenor as Rumble just at the end of last year. So kicking off this year, our drilling's underway. We've got an RC rig and a diamond rig on site for the year. A lot of assays in the lab, so plenty of news flow to come. The board, Tony McClure, Tony and I put Silver Mines together. That was a 25 mil asset purchase, which is now about a 350 mil company. So we've had a good track record of success across a number of ones. There's a good mix on the board, Mark being a geologist, David an engineer, and Trent a corporate guy. As I said, myself mostly involved in forming and financing these types of companies. The rest of the team are WA based. Peter Cash previously ran Millennium. Peter Langworthy, one of the leading geologists in the country, found all the Jubilee nickel deposits, and a founding director at Northern Star and Capricorn, amongst others. And Richard as the geology manager. So I think by any measure, it's about as good a team as you can get from a geological or technical side. So overview, as I said, we got in about a year ago. Since then, by the acquisitions and the various capital raisings, the share price is up about 400%. So it's been a good year for shareholders. Board and management own just over 12%. Of that, I've got about 10%. I've personally put about 4 million into the company over the last year. And the top 40 has got progressively tighter over the last few months. I think in December it was about 42%, now up to 46%. So we've got a really loyal group of shareholders that are supporting the stock. Our market cap, it's a bit over 90 mil as at today's share price, and plenty of cash in the bank to do all the programs that we want to do this year. So this is what Strickland started with. We then bought off Renegade Exploration, the ground through here, and then finally the Millrose Gold project. So resource base, just over 600,000 ounces. So this is Millrose is the prime focus of Strickland's exploration efforts at the moment. Within this sub part of the belt, you've got Northern Star's giant world-class Jundee deposit or mine. They've finished mining Ramone. I think they're mining Julius at the moment. Gordis was mined decades ago. So within this sub part of the belt, Millrose is a really strategic and important resource. It's mostly indicated 1.9 grams. So this is a cross section. We've just started drilling and starting to get the assays back. They're coming back certainly better than we expected. The first hole we put out was 55 meters at 2.4 grams, which is up here. We drilled 200 meters to the south of that hole, hit the same zone, 25 meters at 5. And just yesterday received some more assays. Pleasingly starting to see a depth extension, 8.1 meters at 14.6 grams. And also extending the resource north. So it's very early days for the drilling and the assays coming through, but certainly so far in terms of grade and width, they're exceeding our expectations. One of the ways we looked at this deposit was almost like in the early 2000s when the gold price I think was about $300 an ounce. That was the last time there was a drill rig here, and it almost looks like someone made a discovery and then just stopped. So For example, here you can see, previous drillers have drilled a line and then stopped. So this whole central part has never had any drilling into the fresh rock, but we're seeing the same air core anomalism along strike. And indeed, there's been no southern extension drilling. It's almost like previous drillers thought the mineralization had stopped and didn't follow it through. We've said in the last couple of announcements that we've continued to hit this same ore zone through this central part of various widths. Obviously, the assays will tell us the grade, but where our views started to change about Millrose in particular, we're seeing our geological model is holding up across the project area over about 2 kilometers of strike so far, where we're going through the mafics into the ore zone, and then we're hitting this BIF unit in the footwall. And that BIF unit appears to be a really good marker for the gold mineralization. So where our understanding's developed a lot in the last few weeks, we're starting to, you can see this is the BIF unit in the background, continuing along strike with the same sort of air core anomalism. These cross-cutting structures are probably where previous explorers got confused, because that's caused the mineralization to be slightly offset either to the east or west. But where our view on this has changed a lot is this BIF unit extends for 13 kilometers running north-south. And looking at old air core results, it appears that there's a strong possibility that the entirety of that 13-kilometer BIF unit or strike is going to be mineralized. I think our view internally is that along strike it will dilate, particularly around these cross-cutting structures and pinch as well. But certainly we're dealing with a much bigger gold system than we initially thought. Just back on this, where we were thinking originally was that this was probably had the potential to be that sort of 1 to 1.5 million ounces. Given how our understanding, particularly just in the last few weeks really, but given how our understanding's developed in that period, we're now thinking that it's probably going to be, or certainly has the potential to be quite a bit bigger than what we initially thought. So that's Millrose. We've got 2 rigs on there for the rest of the year. There's about 30 odd holes in the lab at the moment. So we've got a lot of news flow to come, particularly in the next 6 weeks, but also those rigs will keep drilling along strike along that 13-kilometer structure. So we should have a lot of news coming out of Millrose for the remainder of the year. We've got a 3rd rig that will be starting at the end of next month or beginning of July. And it again will go onto Millrose and continue testing along strike, and potentially putting a 4th rig on at some time in Q3. And again, focused on Millrose. So while Millrose is the main focus for us, we've also, at the other end of the project, got 100 k's to the north, the Dust Till Dawn resource. This was what Strickland originally had before we consolidated all this ground. What you can see in the back there is gravity. So we had a view that the previous mineralization hadn't been correctly modeled. We did a 16-hole program tracking this gravity feature, and we've realized that the gravity actually marks the alteration really well, and consequently every hole hit mineralization. What's the biggest story up here is, given that relationship between the gravity and the alteration and the gold, we did another gravity survey and realized that there's about, within these alteration corridors off the granites, there's about 20 lookalike targets, all similar tenor to Dust Till Dawn. So our view is, this is certainly not of the same scale as what we think Millrose is, but in terms of an area that we'll come back to probably later this year or early next year, there's a really good opportunity to build a substantial mineral resource up in the other part of the belt. But again, I think the key takeaway from here is we've got over 100 k's of strike, and we've probably only explored about 3 to 4 kilometers of it in any meaningful way. So there's a huge amount of work to do, or potentially to do, within the rest of the belt, and most likely more potential discoveries along the way. So, and finally, the other interesting the discovery we made. So this is right in the northern part of our tenements. This is the basin contact with the Irahidi. And as you can see, our tenements just creep into it. we've got about 30 Ks of the basin contact, and it's just along strike from Rumble Resources. So Rumble obviously made that fantastic Chinook discovery right about the same time we were putting Strickland together. And while that was happening, we realised that we had some adjacent tenements. We went back and went through some of the old air core data and realised there was quite a bit of zinc lead anomalism within this area. We're quite constrained with what we could drill with Heritage. So these green circles are the only cleared holes. Richard designed a program. We put only 5 holes into it, only guided by what was cleared by Heritage, and then made a quite exciting zinc lead discovery. We've realised as well up here that the copper in soil is a really good marker for these feeder structures, and that's one of the things you're hearing from Rumble. They're talking about copper being a good marker of where these feeder structures are, and the feeder structures are where you're going to get the highest grade mineralisation. So we went back and did some soil sampling, and realised that for us, the elevated copper maps the feeder structure perfectly. So we think we've picked up another one down to the southeast here, and we'll look to do some more soil work in the coming periods with a view to trying to work up a number of these potential feeder structures in preparation for drilling at some point later this year, most likely. Yeah, so we've got a lot of assays in the lab. I think we're probably looking at results coming out around Millrose every 2 to 3 weeks. So it should be a very exciting remainder of the year for Strickland. We're in a booth about 2/3 of the way down in the centre if anyone has any questions or wants to keep chatting. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. For the last presentation in this room, we have ABx Group. So they're creating new sources and technologies for strategic minerals and chemicals by discovering and developing niche deposits and developing novel chemical engineering processes. Here to present is CEO, Dr. Mark Cooksey. Okay, just forward back.
Great. Thank you, Ollie. Thank you everyone for being here. So Australia relies on imports for a number of minerals and chemicals, and we would suffer enormously if supply of those was cut off for any reason. So my name is Mark Cooksey. I've got a 25 years experience in innovation in the mineral sector, particularly for Rio Tinto and then CSIRO, before joining ABx Group a couple of years ago. And the one thing there's one thing to take away from today, it's that ABx Group is judiciously investing in a small number of very niche but high margin opportunities in strategic minerals and chemicals. So the disclaimer and our corporate overview. And so you'll notice the share price has moved up in the last couple of months, and there's 2 particular rises from 10 cents to 14 and then to 18, and they've coincided with announcements we've made on our rare earth exploration in Tasmania, which I'll explain shortly. And as I said, so we are about creating new supplies of strategic minerals and chemicals, and that's by discovering and developing new deposits, but also developing new technologies. We've got 3 areas. We've got rare earths, we've got aluminium fluoride, which is an essential chemical, and we've got bauxite. I'm really just going to talk about the first 2 today, just in the interest of time. So firstly, the rare earths. So you'll know there's lots of rare earths. They've got lots of applications. Demand's growing rapidly. China controls the market, and because there's a certain mix of rare earths in the ground and there's a certain mix of rare earths that are demanded, they don't match. So you get very large variations in price. So if a rare earth's in deficit, very high prices. Rare earths in surplus, very low price. So you really need to know which rare earths are you producing and are in demand. So the chart on the right there shows actually the prices of different rare earths can vary by 3 orders of magnitude, from almost inconsequential to very large. And in particular, the one, and even this was even an eye-opener to me a bit when I really started looking at this closely, is that permanent magnets really dominate the rare earth market. So one, by volume, they're a significant, they're a third of the market. So a third of the rare earths that are produced by volume are used in permanent magnets. But by value, that's actually 90%. So the four rare earths used in permanent magnets, the neodymium, dysprosium, praseodymium, terbium, their use in permanent magnets represents 90% of the value. So that's where you get value out of rare earths. Furthermore, that's actually the fastest growing application for rare earths because they're the ones used in electric vehicles, wind turbines, etc. So they're already the biggest by volume and they're growing the most. So ideally, you'd like to be producing those rare earths. So that's where these ionic clay deposits come in. So most rare earths around the world are produced from hard rock deposits. That's fine, they're good, but they're very chemically intensive to process. So it's a lot of funds and time to get a new project up. In southern China, they produce a significant amount of rare earths from what are called ionic clays. So that's a clay deposit where the rare earth elements and compounds are just loosely adhered to the clays. So at a simplistic level, it's much easier to process. You need less aggressive conditions to extract the rare earths from the clay. The other advantage of these clays is that their mix of rare earths within them are much closer to the demand of the market. So these two charts here, the one on the left shows a typical hard rock deposit. It's the Linus one in Western Australia. And you can see 3/4 of it is lanthanum and cerium, which is actually quite low value. A typical ionic clay on the right is got a bit higher of the dark green, which is the rare earths for permanent magnets, but also much less of the very low value rare earths. So they're quite stark in different. So simplistically, if you have a good ionic clay deposit, like on the right, that's a good place to be. And so ABX, we're the first company to discover rare earths in northern Tasmania. So this is a mixture of, so we started with bauxite 10 years ago. So these results are a mixture of reanalyzing previous bauxite results and also some newer drill results. We had theories that the geology that led to the formation of the bauxite could also lead to the rare earths, which has been borne out by recent experience. And it's quite a significant region. Our discoveries range over 50 kilometres. And also, they appear to be, it's not guaranteed, but they appear to be the ionic clay type. So the relative proportions of the different elements we find very closely match what looks like an ionic clay from on the previous slide. It's a clay, when you're drilling, it's clearly clay. And it's at shallow depth and also very low levels of radioactive elements. So to confirm that and expand on that, what we're trying to do is, our strategy is to rapidly get into production a low-cost production of a rare earth concentrate. And so what we're doing now and over the remainder of this year is, firstly, that you need to do some metallurgical testing. So it's all fine to say, well, we think we've got rare earths, they look like ionic clays, but until you actually do metallurgical testing where you take the samples and leach them under standard conditions, and you can say, well, we get, a high recovery of the rare earth out of that sample, you don't really know. So we've got that testing underway right at the moment. We should be getting results within weeks. Obviously, we need to do more drilling. The results we've got are very positive, but we need to do a lot more drilling. That's happening right now. The team has been down there for the last couple of weeks. There's another couple of months to go on that. And also further enhancing our exploration technology to allow us to explore a wider range of the area to look for highly prospective areas for rare earths. So it's a very exciting time. Though on that map there, every big red dot is higher than 700 ppm total rare earth oxide, which is a good result. We've got numbers up a few thousand ppm. So the numbers are very exciting. We just need to do more of it to confirm how big the deposit is. So our second segment Completely different, right? This is completely different to any other presentation I expect you would have heard yesterday or today. So this is, aluminium fluoride is a chemical. This technology is about producing this chemical. It's not about mining. So aluminium fluoride, and I can speak with this with a lot of passion and history. I've 25 years experience in the aluminium sector. So aluminium fluoride is absolutely necessary for aluminium production. It's an additive that is added to the process and you need it. There's no substitute. And if you didn't have it, within a couple of weeks, your smelter would be seriously at risk of even shutting down just because the process has become so unstable. Now, Australia produces 2 million tonnes of aluminium. We're the world's 5th or 6th largest producer. We are the world's largest aluminium producing region without our own local aluminium fluoride supply. So if for whatever reason, aluminium fluoride could not get here from China, where most of it comes from, or Mexico or Middle East, our smelters would be at risk of shutdown very quickly. It's a fairly high cost material because fluorine is actually a fairly high cost element. It comes from fluorspar, from fluorite, which actually it's pretty rare to get good grades of fluorite. We actually don't produce any fluorite. I don't believe we mine any fluorite in Australia, for example. But it's a very attractive market to get into because aluminium fluoride has a very certain demand and the product requirements aren't that high. It's just, can you get a lower cost source of fluorine? Now, it turns out, and this is sort of a trend that's been happening for maybe a decade, but it's really happening now, is that aluminium smelters coincidentally also produce a waste that contains a lot of fluorine. Now, for a long time, they could sell that to new smelters being built, so the market was nicely balanced. Now we have a situation where there's no more smelters being built around the world, or very few. There's a lot of production happening here and in China, and we're starting to get this fluorine hazardous waste building up. So you've got a problem here where we need aluminium fluoride and we've got a fluorine waste that we don't know what to do with. So the obvious thing to try, and what we've developed, is through an 83% owned subsidiary that we call Alcor, we've developed a technology that can take the fluorine from that bath waste from the smelter and turn it back into aluminium fluoride. So you're literally closing the loop, the fluorine loop within the smelter. We are also developing technology to get a cheaper source of aluminium for the aluminium fluoride. And that's again from dross, which is another aluminium smelter waste, or from bauxite, which is a relatively low cost source of aluminium. So this is really a perfect illustration of the circular economy. You hear that phrase talked about, but this is actually one, literally we take a waste from the plant, we reprocess it and send it back as a raw material that plant needs. It's really ideal. Economically, so these are assessments based on long-term historical prices, exchange rates, etc., and our best estimated costs of production for 20,000 tonnes of aluminium fluoride, which, as I get to, is our planned ultimate capacity for our plant in Australia. Different scenarios there. I mean, even the most conservative one, the most likely one, is the one in green. Even then, we get a very attractive margin, and that's basically because the cost of aluminium fluoride is mostly the materials. We are using a much cheaper source of fluorine. So rather than fluorspar, we're using this bath waste. And we produce a co-product from the bath waste as well, which we also get revenue from. So even under pretty conservative assumptions, we go, this looks like a nicely profitable business. In fact, very attractive if you take even slightly optimistic numbers. And so what we've done, we've got a laboratory and research centre on the central coast of New South Wales. We've done a lot of laboratory work to prove that we can get the fluorine out of the bath waste, use that to make aluminium fluoride that's basically equivalent to what smelters use now. We work very closely with the aluminium companies who are very much on board, both here and overseas, about what we're trying to do. We're now moving to the pilot plant stage. That's a couple of pictures there where we're now, instead of doing work with hundreds of grams, you're now talking about kilos and tens of kilos. And so our plan, the challenge with all new processes is you need to scale it up. It can work in the lab, but how do you prove that it's going to work commercially? So you need a very rigorous approach. which I've done many times in my time at CSIRO. Across the bottom there, you can see the 4 stages. So the first one, laboratory, which we've largely done. Second one, pilot plant at the same location, which we're starting now. The third one is the plan to put our first small commercial plant in Bray in Tasmania, that's nearby the existing aluminium smelter, to produce 1,300 tonnes of aluminium fluoride a year. So that's just a portion of the Australian demand, but it'll be cash flow positive. Importantly, on Friday, last Friday, the federal government, through its Modern Manufacturing Initiative, awarded us a grant of $7.5 million, basically almost half the cost of building that plant. So they clearly see this as a very attractive project, and we had multiple aluminium companies providing us letters of support for that grant application. Then ultimately you would then use the results from that plant, saying that now we're very confident in its performance, to then build a 20,000 tonne plant on the same location. That would satisfy most of the Australian demand for aluminium fluoride. It's about the maximum size you would go to here before you get constrained by raw material movements, etc. After that, then you would go global. So the total aluminium fluoride market is 1 million tonnes. So we would then locate other plants in other major aluminium producing regions of the world, such as Quebec or the Middle East. So it's a very, I think it's a very attractive market, because it's the strategic case in Australia is compelling, but it's also got significant growth opportunities overseas, all with a market that we know is going to be there. And finally, I just want to mention our bauxite operations, because we were formerly Australian Bauxite. We started with bauxite exploration and mining. We've had a small mine in Tasmania that we've finished and rehabilitated. Just a couple of months ago, we announced we've signed a joint venture with an Indian partner to finance our Binjul mine and port in Queensland. We've got plans for another mine in Tasmania as well. So this is not as much of a growth opportunity as the rare earths or the aluminium fluoride, but definitely is there to provide some ongoing revenue. And again, they're nicely profitable operations. So to summarize, ABx Group is about creating new supplies of strategic minerals and chemicals. We're very selective about what we try and pursue. We look for very attractive strategic opportunities. Rare earths, aluminium fluoride, and bauxite. So I really thank you for listening today. We have a booth actually just in the main open area at the front. Talked to plenty of you already, but I'm here tomorrow and happy to answer any questions you've got and talk as much as you'd like about these opportunities. So thank you very much.
Thanks everyone. That concludes all the speakers in this room. I think now it's time for afternoon tea out in the lobby. Thank you.